Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the actual news. Easy listening for the end of the world. And as usual, we don't mean the end of the world per se, just more so the world as we know it. Coming back from a little hiatus with some smooth jazz in the background this week that I think we'll keep. It was a weird week to take off from your news podcast. I was at a wedding, a lovely couple. The bride from Iran, the best man, in fact, from Iran. So kind of a weird time to be bombing Iran. I mean, ceremony. They were serving the salad, and I got a notification that we were, in fact, bombing Iran's nuclear facilities. And I guess I'll start off by telling you a little bit of why we'd be doing that. So, a while back, we had this president named Barack Obama. You may know him as the United States' first black president, and you may know him as a guy who smoked crack and was secretly gay, depending on where you get your news from. Obama had a deal with Iran that we would essentially pay them so that they would not develop nuclear weapons. Because, see, we have the nuclear weapons. We don't want other people to have them. A few other countries do, but it's in our best interest that as few countries as possible have them. Trump came into office, and one of the main things that Trump ran on as he was taking over for Obama was that everything Obama did was gay. So Trump was like, this nuclear deal is gay, and I don't want to do it. And look, many people would agree that it was gay. I think there are certain ways in which it certainly was gay. Regardless, Iran begins developing a nuclear program, and we are trying to dissuade them from doing so. And one of the ways that we did that is by, doing what we do, which is point a gun at their head and say, you don't want to do that. Another factor here, of course, is Israel. I haven't gotten into Israel too much on this podcast, mostly because I don't want the algorithm to punish. Just kidding. I guess what I would point out is that we tend to categorize all people from Israel in one way, and that is really not as nuanced to take as I would expect, particularly from the left. This country's done many things hand in hand with the United States that I wouldn't approve of, but the little point I'd like to make that I don't hear enough is that there are a lot of people from Israel who also don't like what's going on. Anyway, Israel has many ways, financially and even in terms of blackmail. They have these ways that they can persuade the U.S. to do things in their interest. And we can get into more detail about that another day, but basically, Israel has many, many incentives to go to war with Iran as well. So, Israel and Iran begin striking at each other. Of course, Israel is doing this with our approval. Basically, Trump was like in fake negotiations with Iran, and then Israel attacked them, and Trump was like, psych, I was distracting you the whole time so that Israel could come sucker punch you. And, Israel says that they want regime change and to free the people of Iran because the government there for maybe 40 or 50 years, I would need to check on that, has been, frankly, theocratic in a sense. So, Islamic. And, to have a country dominated by a religion, to me, is not an efficient way to run a country, but I suppose you could also question why Judaism rules Israel. Many things going on there. Regardless, Israel and Iran start attacking each other, and then on Saturday the 21st, the U.S. starts bombing Iran's nuclear facilities. And of course, that's so we can say, hey, we have now slowed down Iran's nuclear program. A few days later, Trump declares that he's calling a ceasefire. He's telling Iran and Israel they need to cut it out. And he's going to call this thing the 12-day war. It's just funny because he just celebrated clearly way too early. He was just like, yes, that's right. They'll be calling it the 12-day war. It's like a guy that was way too sure he made a woman come. He's all done. He's like, that's right, folks. They're calling it the 12-minute orgasm. And then he went to roll over and go to bed. And he gets a tap on the shoulder. And they're like, can you finish the job here? And look, the United States, we're not going to go back down there for 45 minutes until our jaw hurts. No, we're going to pretend mission accomplished and get back to bed. So, Trump declares the 12-day war. I think we're now on day 19 of the 12-day war. So we'll see. They have halted striking each other. At this point, we'll see how it develops. Historically, Israel not big on honoring ceasefires. Historically, not even big on honoring ceasefires that Donald Trump orders. So we'll see. Other biggest news this week is Zoran Ani winning the primary for the New York City mayoral race. A lot of people have just kept saying that he's mayor now. That was the primary, so he still has to run in a general. That said, you can pretty fairly assume that he would become the mayor because, a Democrat typically wins the mayoral race. That said, you got Eric Adams most recently, and then historically other Republicans winning. So I don't think it's as sure a thing as, some folks are making it out to be. The other factor is that Zohran received many, many votes. I think the most votes in something like 30 years, maybe more, in that particular race. So, needless to say, he's got quite a bit of support. Republicans, conservatives in general, freaking out about this big time. And it's one of those things where they're like, oh my God, it's a Muslim socialist. Okay, why are you surprised that this is happening in New York City? You guys remember the other person you were saying was going to cause the total collapse of this city? The Latina socialist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh my God, a Latina socialist. Everything's gonna collapse. It's all gonna explode. And then it didn't. She just has a random kind of annoying news bite every once in a while. That's it. That's all that's occurred. the Republicans just don't have this thing. They don't have this thing they need to answer for, which is, okay, well, if the leftists are so terrible and evil, why is it that when you're in power, shit just keeps getting more expensive? When the problem on everyone's mind is why everything is so expensive. And in fact, that's what you're citing when you're running. Everything's too expensive when I'm in power. And then none of your economic solutions actually work. Oh my God. Oh my God. The money never trickles down. You cut taxes for very wealthy people. Shockingly, they don't give that money to anyone poorer than them. You can't answer for it. So, then people see progressives get into power. Their own taxes usually don't go up, or they go up by a negligible degree. Their services improve. They see public transit work a little bit better. So yeah, they're like, okay, this is better. To pretend that they're being fooled and tricked into this communist state that's inevitably going to doom them. It's just not working. Eric Adams is like openly, he's openly just texting some Turkish officials like, yes, let's do corruption crimes together. I love you. I love fucking over the average citizen. And then the texts come out, and Republicans are shocked that the guy has a 20% approval rating. I think he's like the lowest approval rating since they started doing approval ratings for mayors. He's a silly guy, though. So look, we'll see how the situation in Iran develops. We'll see how the situation with Zohran in New York City develops. I would guess that he can win this thing. You know, you might have a situation where a centrist Democrat such as Cuomo runs as an independent because a bunch of rich people are paying him to. He cuts away from a bunch of Zohran's votes, and then someone else wins, but there's no telling until next time on the actual... Excuse me. Damn, I almost nailed that. Then I had a little tickle in my throat. But regardless, thanks for listening as always, and we'll see you next week on the actual news.